All right, here's what we're gonna do. It was very nice of him to separate all that for us, but we're gonna trash all that work. We're just gonna flatten it out. Uh, all right, so we've flattened it out. Um, Now you can see it's just we're in the layers, and then we're in CMYK. We're gonna hold Shift, click the black layer to turn it off, and then click the little eyeball to turn till we can see it. So now we're working underneath the black layer. We're working cyan, magenta, yellow only. So if we take a color, and we're in CMYK, yes. So if we take a color, we can kind of just go in, work right underneath. And we're all in the same layer. Everything's golden. Yeah. So, all right. Now we're going to talk about exactly what we want to do with flats. I'm going to be doing this mouse only. I have a Cintiq that I use, but we're going to try to assume that you do not have sophisticated equipment at home. Uh, so yeah, we're just going to jump into this. The first thing I like to do is just take the whole canvas and drop a color into it. So we're going to do that. I think that when you see a lot of white, you yeah, I'm streaming, Tony. I'm trying it out. uh, when you see a lot of white on something, it's demoralizing. A lot of empty space will make you feel like you're not making progress. So we're just gonna drop it in. Uh, a nice blue for the background for the stars, and we're gonna work back to front. So we're gonna do the blue stars, then we're gonna do the asteroid here, and it doesn't matter if we're selecting through Thanos at all. That's totally fine. We're gonna do the asteroid. And I guess since these are probably asteroid chunks, we're going to do those too. So you just lasso them up. And I used to do this when I first started getting started in 2002-ish. I was working for Lee Lowridge at Xylenol Studios. Um, I wasn't the most competent colorist. I started working at that studio at the same time that Matt Wilson did, and his raw talent was like blowing me out of the water, to be honest. I feel like I gotta work twice as hard and claw into what I've earned. But what I was doing there was this. I was flatting. I was flatting 100 bullets. I was flatting Y the Last Man. And like a bunch of other smaller books that have not aged quite as gracefully. And so I would come to the studio every day between classes because I was still going to school at Savannah College of Art and Design and do this. Um, and it let me kind of like learn the ropes of coloring in like a low impact environment, and it also helped me get a lot faster. I haven't flatted anything in a long time, so if I'm not as quick as maybe seasoned flatters, forgive me. Uh, but yeah, you just want to like, I'm using the lasso here, and if you start a selection like that, and then you hold down Alt, it'll switch to the polygon, and then you can, if you hold down the mouse button, you can use the regular lasso. So between those two different types, you can kind of get anything you want out of it. You get a little versatility. So I don't know that he had these on a different layer as like, I don't know, gem shards or something, but I don't know if he just like doodled them in on the wrong layer accidentally, which can happen. This is why I don't fuck with layers, because, they tend to, I don't know, run rampant. So we're just going to drop the asteroid in. We're just going to fill that space. And now we're going to fill all of Thanos. So we're going to pick a color. We're going to pick like a gold. Um, and just kind of fill him in just one chunk at a time. And you want to get as precise as possible. I gotta zoom in and check this out. Yeah, see, I was like a little bit off on that line. Uh, and I don't want to like edge into the stars either. Um, so yeah, so I got to flat a bunch of stuff for Lee Lowridge at Xylenol, and it taught me the ropes, and it taught me I got to color a few things, and I got to fuck up coloring a few things. I did some Jimmy Neutron comics for Nickelodeon magazine. That was like my first gig, and they were terrible. And I actually learned that when I flat my own, I was getting greedy. Is the thing. I wanted to flat my own stuff so I didn't have to pay somebody to flat it. And then when I realized that when I flat my own stuff, I tend to get exhausted looking at it. And if I'm exhausted, I'm not thinking clearly. And I learned from that first project not to flat my own stuff because it ends up looking awful. We actually Lee and Matt went in and like fixed all those pages. It was super embarrassing, but it kicked my ass to be like more aware of like what I was doing, how I was feeling while I was working, and that kind of thing. Um, do I actually work in individual color channels, or is that just for reference? Oh, the stuff on the right. The stuff on the right is just for reference, so that I can know what Thanos looks like. But this, I'm working in cyan, magenta, yellow, and I turned off the black channel, if that's what you're asking. So that way the line art is preserved. And we're actually, one of the steps that I skipped because I'm not used to flatting is I dropped the line art into a alpha channel just so that we don't end up destroying the line art if we ever need to go back to it. But you know what? We're destroying the line art. It's fine. We're just going to do it. PJ's going to be furious with us, but we're going to destroy all his line art. So yeah, and I started working at Silent Studios uh, in like a really strange way. I fell in with like a group of really ambitious people in college. Uh, oh, an alpha channel. I can show you in a minute. Once we're done flattening Thanos, I'll get into the alpha channels. So I fell in with a really group of ambitious people, really great group of ambitious people. Um, Matt Wilson was actually not one of them, even though he was in school at the same time as me. I didn't get to know Matt until we were both working in the studio, but I was hanging out with Sean Murphy and Chris Donaldson and Chad Thomas, and we were going to conventions, comic conventions, at like a really early. Well, for me it was early. Those guys are all super talented, but like my stuff sucked, and it was like sophomore year. I was like this 19-year-old nobody, and I was like trying to con myself into. It was like, where's the party going to be? Where's the Marvel party? We got to get to the party. And at the time, it was around Savannah, Georgia, and so there was a studio called Gaijin Studios in Atlanta, and we were going to, I think they were in Atlanta. We were going to conventions up there, and then we were like, how do we get in at the studio? Are they gonna like kick us out? It was a big worry. Uh, Looking back on it, it's ridiculous now because it's just like so many people show up they can't possibly contain it. But like Adam Hughes was there, and there's like like 19-year-old me being like, "Hello, Adam. Let's talk about comic books." I was like way out of my league. uh, yeah, it was aptly named Gaijin Studios. So yeah, I was like way out of my league, and my portfolio was terrible. And when the thing they were telling me in art school was that you want to they gave me such bad advice for getting into comics. They were like, bring your portfolio, like print it out, put your information on it, hand it to everybody. Like nobody. Here's the thing. Like when I come home from a con, now that I've been on like the other side of the table, if you hand me stuff, like I if it's comic books, I'll read it. If it's a portfolio, I might glance at it. If you want to like talk about the portfolio, I'll sit there and talk with you all day, but if you're like, "Hey, here's my stuff," and then you walk away, like that stuff gets like put into a pile, with like a bunch of other cards and stuff like that. And then I mean, like, I don't know if this is true of all creators, but for me, like, that stuff kind of like accrues in my studio and then eventually just gets dumped. Are we back? It seems like we're back. That's weird. My headset just like decided to just give up the ghost for a second there. I was deep in concentration. Deep. Maybe I need to plug this bad boy in. Give me 1 second. Maybe it's given up the ghost. Yeah, low battery. All right, we're back. All right, so what was I saying? Something about falling in with ambitious people and what not to do at Comic Cons, and I was basically doing that. Uh, so I was doing that, but the good thing that I was doing was I was trying to socialize as much as possible at these Comic Cons. Um, all right, we're gonna pause that story for a second. I'm gonna teach you a little bit. So here we have Thanos is blocked in, the asteroids are blocked in, the sky is blocked in. Um, yeah, heartlessly throwing some poor kid's portfolio away like a monster. Yeah, welcome to comic books. I'm the nice guy in comic books too. That's the thing. Is like I feel like I try to give everybody the time of day, and like if you're heartless, like I can't imagine what they're doing to these poor kids' portfolios if you're heartless. Uh, but yeah, I'll talk portfolio all day. Like if you come to the table with a portfolio, I will absolutely talk to you. Like give you half hour of my time, no problem, as long as there's not like a giant line. But usually there isn't. We can shoot the shit. Uh, but like if you're like, hey, here's my portfolio, and you walk away, yeah, no, get the fuck out of here. Like you're just a number to me at that point. You're not a individual. Unless your portfolio is like fucking outrageous. But if it is, then you probably don't need my help. So, all right, we're gonna talk real quick about alpha channels. So I was saying that I want to take the black line art, and then if we hit this little button in the corner here in the channel palette, it says new channel, create new channel. It's gonna pop up in a second here. Uh, See, it says Alpha 1, and this is what I was talking about. So we just cut and pasted the line art into the alpha channel. So when we work and when this eventually prints, it'll print CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, black here, channel 3, 4, 5, and 6. So channel 7 is like a way to preserve the alpha channel. And flatters don't normally do this, but it'd be great if they did. I'm going to take the flats here, the cyan, magenta, yellow. I'm going to copy them and drop them into a channel as well. So now, while we're working, if a flatter or if a colorist wants to go, okay, well, I want to do some like weird shit to the background, or like I'm gonna use a texture brush on these asteroids. So, or I'm gonna do, I don't know, whatever to Thanos, because I don't know if we're gonna do more on. We might do like the electricity and stuff in the background, but if they're like, okay, I want to do something to Thanos, but imagine he's got like a rainbow of colors in him. I can just be like, okay, alpha channel, select Thanos, done deal, and then you got him. Uh, so that's the way we're gonna do it, and we're gonna drop the flats into there too, because once you get started painting, once you start going, like sometimes you get in the weeds, and it's nice to be able to just grab the flats to preserve them as best you can. So what was I saying? So I fell in with a group of ambitious people, and we're gonna take Thanos, and we're just gonna deselect the parts of his armor that are like this yellow. We're trying to get from less specific to more specific. Um, so we're gonna deselect these parts that are yellow, and then probably fill him with like a blue for his the other parts of his armor. So I fell in with these ambitious people, and we started going to Comic Cons, and I was bluffing my way into situations where I was like, "Hello, Phil Hester, an actual adult. I'm 19-year-old Nick Filardi. Please take me seriously." And it was ridiculous, but like it was good because I got to socialize with these people, and then when I was like ready to be taken seriously, they already knew who I was. Uh, and one of the benefits was that like I was at this con and we were at a bar, and I went up to the bar and I was buying for the table because we were doing like a rounds thing. Uh, and there was a very very drunk editor that I will not publicly smear his name, but he was very intoxicated, and he edits a huge book. So I think that these things are these things, but we'll keep them orange. Uh, so he was very intoxicated, and he was like, "What are you drinking?" And I was like, "Well, I'm buying for the table." And it was just like random conversation. Like I didn't even start the conversation. He just started talking to me because he was intoxicated, and he was like, "What are you drinking?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm buying for the table." And he's like, "Well, what are all y'all drinking?" So I was like, "All right, we're all drinking." I forgot what we were drinking at the time, beer or something. Uh, and he goes, "Okay." He's like, he calls over he yells at the bartender, which I remember thinking at the time was like rude as hell. But he was like, he just yelled the order at him down the thing, and the guy got it. So in the meantime, he was uh, he was like, "Well, what do you do?" And like this should have been my first tip off that like this situation was a mess, because like I was this, young kid, and he was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Well, I'm kind of a colorist." Uh, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it's like cool." And he was like, "Bring me some of your stuff tomorrow. I want to see it at the con." I was like, "Sure." And in my mind, I was like, "Holy shit," And I was like, "What do you do?" Because I'm like totally ignorant as to what everybody's purpose is, and I hadn't met any of these people. Uh, so he was like, "Oh, I edit this giant book that you love," and I was like, "Oh, cool, that's neat." uh, so he was like, "Yeah, bring your stuff by." All right, so Thanos's like weird headpiece. This doesn't even do it that well. So I guess he's got like this is one piece, and then these are I don't know if this is supposed to be a gold piece here. I'm gonna say no. It looks it looks in this like Marvel versus Capcom rendering or whatever this is turnaround that it's not rendered, but then it kind of looks like it's rendered in this. But who knows what Joe Jusko was doing in 2013? Anyway, yeah. So I brought my stuff in. uh, I had my art school taught me that I needed to have my portfolio ready to go with my email address on it and everything. And this is the thing, art school was telling me, get your portfolio together, put your email address on it, because you're going to drop it off and then you're going to get a job. And that's how you get jobs. And that is totally not how you get jobs. Uh, so, huh. This has got like a little ridge here. Maybe this is blue. We'll include that. So let's grab a blue. Oops. Go back. We can always go back. There are no accidents. No mistakes, just happy little Thanos. So I went back to the con. I saw him the next day, and I was like, "Hey, man, what's up?" And he was like, "Who are you?" And I was like, we met at the bar. Uh, I'm a 19-year-old kid, or 20-year-old kid." And he was like, "Oh man, I was very, very drunk." He like apologized, like he not for being drunk, but for just being like, "Oh, I was so drunk. I'm sorry for what I did." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. It's fine. It's fine. You were fine." Uh, I was like, "You said you wanted to look at my stuff," and he said, "Yeah, all right." So he takes a look at it. He flips through in silence, and he like stops on these pages that were actually. This is a brand new headset, and I have had nothing but problems trying to stream it. Uh, so I think it's because I have no audio going, and so the thing is like, "Oh, you're not listening to anything. Let me just shut you down." So I'm gonna put on some music, and I actually, uh, yeah, because on Discord I'm like listening to something. I'm listening to you jokers like doing stuff. Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to like turn off the power save, because I do think that's what's happening. I'm gonna try to. This is ridiculous, but I'm gonna try to stream music, and hopefully the whole stream doesn't tank. And I don't. You shouldn't be able to hear the music. I don't think you will, which is good because I want this to not be, you know, uh, muted. Can you guys hear that? I don't think you can hear that. It's not popping up, I don't think, on the mixer. Good, good. Okay, we're in business. So he's looking at the portfolio and he's looking at it in silence, and all I can think of is like, you know, I've made an ass out of myself. Like it's here's this guy who's way more important than I am, and he's looking at it, and he stops on these pages that are of the book that he edited, that I like pulled the blacks out of and recolored it myself. Uh, not to be like, I'm gonna do this better, but just for practice, because I didn't have anything in print at the time. And he stops at them and he looks at them and he's like, these are the first pages of this character that I've seen in a long time that don't make me want to puke. So I was like, oh yeah? I was like, great, great. Like it was like a potentially terrible situation, and he seemed to, get over it, and I'm over it, and he's digging the work. So he was like, look, here's the person who handles all our color stuff, um, at this mega corporation company. You should email her, and we'll check out your stuff. And when you're ready, or he didn't even say when you're ready. He was just like, email her and we'll be in touch, is what he said. So in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm getting a job tomorrow, because that's what art school told me. Uh, so here I am, like, oh, well, I'll work for this company, like, in like a month or something. Uh, and instead, it was like maybe 7 or 8 years before I started working for that company, and it wasn't even with this editor, who is still there, by the way. It was ridiculous. Anyway, the point is that things move slowly in comics, and you got to be patient. Uh, so we are lightening up Thanos' face. I don't know if we should do any of the piping in here. Probably not. But let's tweak. Uh, there's like he put a couple little things in here. So with flats, we're gonna digress, and I'm gonna actually teach for a moment rather than just jammering on. With flats, you want to just the goal is to make the thing as easy for the colorist to interpret as possible, and I could do this piping, but like I don't know, like and this like his collar, the top of his collar on the inside here. Um, I could do that, but like I don't know if it's gonna like what the lighting's gonna look like on this thing. Um, I screwed up that flat, so we're gonna just fix that real quick. Uh, so I don't know. Some colorists like that stuff all taken care of. Some don't, and like it's the piping's connected here, but it's not connected here. So it's like, do I fix that? Do I not fix that? Is it just a suggestion? Is it a separate color? You know, I don't know. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for the colorist to make changes. And if something's not definite, you probably don't want to mess with it. Um, because that's going to be your interpretation as the flatter, and you don't want to like step on the toes of the other person. But like this stuff is clearly like this is a separate section, and like he has like piping over here on this stuff, but like I don't know. His costume has changed like so much, and depending on like who's drawing it, it'll change. So let's try to just err on the side of caution. Maybe put in detail in appropriate places. Yeah, we'll do it for his belt and stuff, but we'll keep it separate otherwise. So yeah, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get a job. I'm gonna email this person, and I got this other person to say I was good to go, and I'm good to go. And I didn't get a job there for another 8 or 9 years. So before I sent the portfolio in, since I'm like new to this whole situation, there was a comic book coloring studio that was in town, Xylenol, run by Lee Larridge, and I thought it'd be a good idea, and I don't know where I came up with this or how I felt it was appropriate at all, but I was like, I'm just going to take my portfolio and go down to the studio where everybody's working in a professional environment and then demand their time. So I went in and was just like, hey, do you have a second? Uh, and so here's something to note when you're flatting. So I like selected into the blue here, into the stars, and I could by hand deselect it, but that might be a problem. So if I by hand deselect it, or like even if I did it too thin, like say I did it too thin like that, and then I filled, uh, what you're gonna end up with is like this weird, like yellow, orange, blue. It's like weirdly connected, and that's not what you want to do. What you want is to make a clean cut. So you can like go into the blue and then take the wand and then just deselect the blue and then fill. And now you have like a clean cut that actually maintained its shape like through the thing. So you're not like, further altering the shape that you put down initially. Um, So like, the shape that we put down for the alpha layers here to like help out the colors in the future isn't altered. Although we fucked it up because we didn't do it for that side, but we'll do it for that side. Uh, so there we go. Uh, so I brought my portfolio into the studio, and I had some Dusty Star pages in there, which is an old comic book by Andrew Robinson, and the Lee was a big fan of Andrew Robinson and was like buds with him, and I didn't know that. He was like, "These pages look great. You got good taste. You're into Andrew Robinson." He was like, "If it helps, put my name on it." And I can't even believe he gave me the time of day. But you're like, this is the thing. If you come in and you're like, I wasn't coming in being like, I need it. You gotta hire me immediately. I was just coming in being like, hey, can you just like take a look and tell me if I'm doing anything like glaringly wrong? Uh, and he was like, no, you're all good. He was like, put my name on it if it helps. See what they say. And so I sent it in. I didn't hear anything, and then about a month and a half went by, and Nick Dragato was working in the studio. Excuse me. Nick Dragato was working in the studio, and he just decided to quit. He was like, at the time, he was like kind of hovering on the edge of uh, drawing or coloring. He was getting hired for color gigs through the studio. Um, but that dude is just so crazy talented, and he did not want to be there forever, and he started drawing, and now he's drawing East of West. I think he's still drawing that book. I think that book's still coming out, and you should probably pick that up if you like comic books, because it's real, real good. Uh, hold on one second. I'm gonna put you on mute. All right, signing important documents. Uh, so yeah, East of West. Nick Dragato was leaving. So Nick Dragato left the studio, so they had an open chair, and I just got called out of the blue. Hello, fiance. Yes. uh, yeah. So I got called in, and I got this call. It actually woke me up because I was a college student and I was on like working all night, and it was like noon, and he was like, "Hey, you want to go to lunch?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So we went and got tacos, and he was like, "Hey, you want to come work for the studio? It's page rate." At the time, he was paying me $20 a page for flats, which was awesome. I don't know if you can still get that rate now. I think it's gone down. Like everything in comics, the page rates have gone down. Uh, I was like, sure. So I started working at the studio. I started doing this. I started flatting. And then kind of like did a Jimmy Neutron comic, and that was terrible. And we did. I had worked on a couple other things, but yeah, I it was a crazy experience, and it kind of got me started. And more than getting me started, I'm trying to figure out what we're gonna do for the background here because we got to do something. All right, so the flats, the whole point of the flats is to kind of separate things, and you don't want to do like any gradients or anything. Like right now, Thanos is like easily you can easily grab all the parts. Like you can be like, oh, okay, I want all of the blue parts, and be like, boom, there you go. You know, I'm gonna grab just the background, and it's like, okay, there you go. Uh, I might separate the little asteroids from the big asteroids. You know what? Let's do that. So I got my start at the studio flatting. Eventually, Lee packed up the studio, and then I was on my own. But now, when I was going to cons, because I was still in school. I was like flatting at the studio from like junior year to senior year. I'd go to cons and I'd be like, "Oh, I work for Lee Lowridge," and that was like my foot in the door. And I actually, when I was starting working on my own, still flatting a little bit for Matt Hollingsworth and Lee occasionally, just to make ends meet. Because when you start, you don't get as much. You don't get a high page rate on these like lower paying books because they can't support the high page rate because they're not selling as much as Wolverine or whatever. Um, so I'm trying to think if we're going to do anything with this background. I might just leave it blank because I'm afraid that anything I do with the background is going to be like an interpretation of what's going on, and I don't know that if I was a colorist, if I would want that, but let's at least put the Infinity Gems in. Um, so so yeah, I started getting it in, and from showing up to cons for like 3 years, 5 years, I started just making friends with people. That doesn't show up. We're gonna take a little bit of liberties with the Infinity Gems here, just so that they pop out. Uh, yeah, so that's how you break into comics, and that's how like I ended up breaking into comics, and so just find an editor drunk at a bar, and then you'll have a comic job. No, the idea is that, oh, this one's yellow, really? Yellow and orange Infinity Gems. Great. Fantastic. Uh yeah, you should go to these shows, have some of your stuff with you, but don't like jam it in front of people's faces and leave. You should go to these shows and like talk to people and ask for critiques, and especially comics is kind of, there's like three levels. I would say that like, here, we're gonna flip this thing down. I'm gonna start drawing on crap just to further drive home my point. So I'm putting the Cintiq into my lap, which is why everything shook for a second there. So comics is kind of like, if it was a bar graph, it'd be like, the top 25% or whatever are like people that you should talk to about getting better. So this is like top 25%. And they have strong opinions. Uh, they know what works, they know what looks good, and you should get crits from them. Uh, and then you have like, you know, uh, the next like 50% ish. This bar graph's terrible. Uh, this bar graph isn't even a bar graph. Uh, so then you have the next 50%, and like depending on where the person falls in here, you might want to, you're like, when you like talk to them, you're going to want to like ask for critiques. But you might be able to score a job in here. Like this is going to be the sweet spot. You're going to talk to pencilers and writers and inkers, uh, and potentially you could get a coloring job from one of them. Like they might have a book coming up that needs a colorist, and you show them your portfolio and just be like, hey, what do you think? Like they're going to look at it and they're going to be like, oh, this looks really good, or they're going to be like, oh, you need to do this, 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 and this. And if they're not a fan, they're not a fan. But when you ask them, and if they're in their mind, if they're looking, they will see you and be like, oh, we can take a chance on you because we're coming up too. And these are the people that you're going to end up like falling in with. These are the people who are like your peer groups. Uh, and then the top guys up here, well, like top within this middle 50%, they are either going to have, they might have small projects, so small stuff, not full runs of books or stuff like that, but like short stories, 4 pagers that they like can't really pay for, um, but could get you some good experience or whatever. And they actually, they're like close to here, so they might be able to give you a good crit. And then what you don't want to do is start to fall into this. Uh, this is like the bottom 25%. I mean, maybe even like I'd say maybe the bottom like 10% is like toxic, and then maybe the bottom 25% is just like this is you when you start. The bottom 25% is where you start. uh, it's you have an idea, you're looking for somebody to take a chance on you. Um, you're not exactly sure what you want to do, or you're looking for somebody to work with or whatever, and you just want opinions on your work. You want to get better, and you're ambitious, and that's what you should be doing. Is like going to shows, bringing a portfolio. Like it doesn't, and this is the thing too, like art school is like it's got to be between 5 and 10 pages. Like I've never like looked at a portfolio and been like 4 pages, get the fuck out of here. Like it's insane that like people get wrapped up in these details. Just print out a portfolio of your strongest work, bring it to a show, staple it together. It doesn't have to be in like a dressed up thing. Like I had friends of mine were doing things like crafting a steel portfolio to put the pages in, and it's like insane. Like nobody gives a shit. Just print it out, bring it to the show, come hang out. Done deal. uh and that's how I think you break into comics, and that's kind of how I broke in. And if you talk breaking into comics, I think is my favorite subject. You talk to any person who is in comics, and they will give you this winding tale of how they ended up in comics, because it doesn't necessarily it's not the same for everybody, and there's no right way to do it. You just kind of like start making work, you start showing up, and then you just fall in with people uh, who are like similar in the similar boat, and they start working with you. Um, yeah, so that's about it. The flats for Thanos look about done. I might put the lightning in on the Cintiq just because it's gonna be easier to do on the Cintiq. But this is what like a finished flatted page would look like. Uh, you turn off the black channel, everything's like nicely separated. Uh, it doesn't blend together at all. It's like chunky so that you can easily grab it without leaving like ghosted lines on the thing. Uh, it's like it's solid. Some colorists like their stuff in RGB, some in CMYK, some like them like flats dark, some like them, you know, new like shiny and bright. Some work, that's because some work dark to light and light to dark. Uh, you know, there's no right way to do it. And that's the other thing with comics is like I rambled on and on about breaking into comics, but there's no right way to do things. Like anybody who tells you this is the right way is full of shit. Like, you just gotta try things. You just gotta go. I don't know. You just start. You just start making comics. That's how you break into comics. You start making comics. If this was a page for flatting, you'd want to be careful. Like if this was a single panel for Thanos, and then there was like a couple other panels in the page, you'd want to make the blue the same blue in his suit for the whole page. The orange the same orange for the whole page, and that's about it. I'm gonna stream some games in a little while. I'm gonna stream The Last of Us, but next week or maybe even this weekend, we're gonna stream coloring this Thanos, and I'm actually gonna put the flats out on my Twitter for anybody else who wants to try to color it. I'm gonna ping a bunch of colorists, so hopefully we start jamming on this piece, and we'll see a lot of different interpretations for Thanos out there. So yeah, I'll see you guys later today for some Last of Us Remastered, I believe. I will talk to you soon.